Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have April Lopez with me here today. April is the Chief Executive Officer at Recovery Empowerment Network. Welcome to the show, April.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, can you give us a snapshot of your business right now, please?
Absolutely. So Recovery Empowerment Network, or REN, is a peer-led organization here in Central Phoenix. And basically what that means is our organization helps those with serious mental illness, general mental health, substance use, or reentry. So someone coming back into society after being in prison. And what's really special about that is we are non-clinical. And so every staff person here has experience with one of those areas or multiples of those areas, or is a family member to somebody and was impacted in their life by one of those areas. So we come from a very person-to-person peer perspective versus the clinical perspective that there's plenty of psychologists and people out there to have those conversations. There's not always somebody that can say, I too was a heroin addict and I understand where you're at, and here is the steps I took to move forward. And so we try to come from a very pure perspective. And we have grown from, just doing the seriously mentally ill population to being able to open that up to youth and open that up to people with general mental health and the substance use and the reentry. And it's been a really productive and successful method of getting on the ground level and supporting them in their journey just where they are.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think the name with empowerment in it is very good, very fitting. It's something that I didn't appreciate earlier on, but as I've gotten older, I've appreciated how important it is for people to have maybe a purpose or some sort of tangible skills that they can add value to everybody, the community with and stuff.
Yeah.
And
it's really important, the empowerment side of it, of having a say. So often those with a serious mental illness, it became apparent at a young age. They
lost their agency.
They often get pushed into foster care, and so they have very little autonomy. They've been told where to go, where you're going to live, where you're going to eat, where you're going to stay, what meds are you going to take, what time is your next appointment, where are these things at? They've had zero say, and so we're really big at empowering them to make a decision. What do you want to do? So a lot of times you go to a doctor's appointment, and they're the same thing. You're going to come here, you're going to stand here, you're going to do this, you're going to talk to this person. Right. We don't have any appointments. It's completely a walk-in center, so a person can make that decision to come in at any time because recovery happens on their schedule, not ours. And rather than being, are you med compliant? Did you go to your doctor's appointment today? What is your blood pressure? We say, good morning, we're serving breakfast. Would you like to come in and have some? And so it's putting that empowerment back in their hands, whereas often that's kind of been stripped away from them.
Sure. Yeah. Good insight there. And I can imagine that's like I meant to say that agency is responsibility, right? That personal empowerment of having say over your future in general is not having it. It very much leads to a victim mindset and kind of not surrender, but a defeatist sort of, right? You're stuck to the whim of life, and
it leads to very much helplessness.
Yes.
And then it gets to kind of entitlement after that. Like, well, somebody's always just done it for me.
Oh, right.
And so now you have to do it for me. And so one of our biggest things is we offer peer support and skills development. So we do a lot of intentional education and a lot of skills development because we have a lot of members. They've not ever cooked a can of soup. They've never done a load of laundry. They've never gotten their own cab. They've never made their own doctor's appointments. They've never been empowered or entitled to make those decisions or those choices on their own. So we often have people that have never lived on their own. They've been in foster care and then group housing, and now they're 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're saying, no, I want to be on my own. I want to go do these things and move forward in my life. And we have people here that can walk a 2-year path of finding housing for somebody where we'll go and do every single step with them, but they have to do the steps themselves. And so they get to make those choices. And then when they stumble and they make a poor choice, or they decide that they're not going to go to that appointment or they're not going to show up, We won't do it for them. Their case just stops right there, and we just keep helping them. Okay, well, we're taking the step back. Here's the next step that we need to do. And so it encourages them to have that motivation that they can stand on their own feet, they can do these things on their own, and get them kind of moving back into society and having that support network and people around them to rally and say you can do it.
Excellent. That's awesome. That's awesome. How long has Ren been operating?
It'll be 20 years on June 20th.
Wow.
Yeah, so we
Excellent.
are almost at 20 years, and I've been here for 11 of them. So,
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And how many people or how big is Ren?
so we usually have about 40 staff
Okay.
on site, and it's a mixture of recovery coaches and administrative support, but most of them are recovery coaches because we're very kind of boots on the ground sort of organization. It takes a lot of one-on-one support to make those huge mountains move.
Okay. And can you do you have people who are working for Ren who are, I guess, clients, or how does that work?
Yeah, so everybody that works here could potentially be a member or is a family member of somebody that is a member. So what we do is kind of A through Z in recovery. We have what's called our Hope Store team, and they will go out and do a 90-day program with an individual. Let's say you have somebody that hasn't left their home in years. Maybe they have some medical things they need to be taken care of. Maybe they have some hoarding things they need to be taken care of. So they'll go out into the community, work with that person and be like, okay, what are the big low-hanging fruit that we can take care of and kind of take some of that burden off. So they'll make a 90-day plan.
Okay.
Once that's done, the goal is to get them into our building. We have a 23,000 square foot building, and one of our rooms downstairs is called our Recovery Empowerment Center, and it's about a 5,000 square foot area. And what's nice is an individual can come in just word of mouth off the street and say, I'm ready to be in recovery. Within 20 minutes, we can usually do a self-referral, check their eligibility, and get them into that Recovery Empowerment Center. And basically, what's nice about that is they can immediately go into services, and there's always an open group going on. So it's usually kind of a very casual area. And the whole goal is the social support network. We want them to have friends because isolation is one of the biggest causes of relapse, suicidal ideation, depression. They're alone and nobody
Right.
really is seeking out their friendship. And so it's beautiful. You'll have somebody who'll walk in and the other members will immediately be like, is today your first day? Let me show you around. Let me show how to get here. We also have a full licensed restaurant on site. And so we serve breakfast and lunch Monday through Saturday. Thursday nights, we do dinner as well,
Oh,
or anytime we have a night activity, because food
okay.
insecurity in our population is huge. It is a huge problem. We have a small food bank here. We work with St. Mary's Food Bank for our food, so that if somebody comes to us and says, I have nothing for dinner, not a problem. Let's fill that need. And so when you can take care of those first two needs, we were getting some socialization and we're getting food, that safety and security comes in and the desire to get out of your house, go and do things is happening. We also have a full computer lab on site for technology. That's a huge burden for people. They're very
Wow. Yeah.
fearful of technology. And then upstairs, we have a full gym. And so starting to get that physical health into it and
Sure.
moving forward in those things. And then we have our really intentional programs like our supported employment. So if somebody is wanting to go into work, it's very scary and we'll make sure they get to that first job interview. We can even be in the first job interview. We can go for their first couple of days of work. Then let's say a year down the road and they've been doing really well, then we'll start having a conversation about how do you like your job? Is it time for a promotion? Is it time to ask for a raise? So we can continue to support those individuals for years to come as they come through. And then we also have classes that are called our recovery support training. And that is the certified peer support class in order for our members to become peer supports so they can then go and work in other places and show other people the way
Right.
that they needed.
Pay
And
it forward.
so they can get all of those classes and everything. So we can go all the way from you haven't left your home in 9 years and you have some big things we need to move forward to, by the time that you're done hanging out at Ren, we're hoping that, you're being fed well, you're exercising your body, you've got social support network, you've got a solid resume, you have some certificates under your belt, and then we can get them an employment and continue to give all those services around them and move them forward.
Wow. That's a lot to accomplish with 40. That's a full team with, I'm sure you have a lot of affiliate relationships as well.
Yeah, so we try to work with as much as the community as we can, but it's really mostly encapsulated here at Ren. Another program that's really amazing that we have is called Project Open Sky. We had found that there were so many of our members that had never gone camping. They had never
Hmm.
been in the woods. They had never experienced nature. They didn't know what, a squirrel out in the trees is living life like. And so we have all of the tents, all of the resources that's needed, and we do a weekend camping trip once a month. And we do either backpacking, so they can literally, strap a backpack on and hike up to their campsite. We do tent camping, so we drive up to the campsite. And then we also have retreat camping, which is a little more my style. You have a full cabin with a bathroom and a shower, and we're still in the woods, but there's a house that you get to stay in.
Okay.
And we do that monthly. We also have an on-site esthetician, and they can get a facial every other week because skincare and hygiene is something that is often forgotten. And then those in drug addiction have often damaged their skin significantly and have some embarrassment issues and don't really know
Right.
how to address that. And so we have an esthetician that can help with that. We also have a program called Mind Masters where they use guided visualization with red and blue light therapy. And then we also have chairs that they sit in and they kind of vibrate at the same harmonics of like a beehive or like your cat purring, which is
Hmm.
supposed to be bone strengthening and grounding. And so that's a
Okay.
great way. And there's like 7,000 different tracks that they can pick. So whether they're wanting to work on an addiction or smoking or anxiety or sleeping or weight loss. So we go through and we talk to them about what their goals are. And then they start that project going through Mind Masters. And we are in the process right now of opening up a hair salon because haircuts are something that they cannot afford. And so
Hmm.
oftentimes, those hygiene things that kind of bar them from being friends with other people that are not in their community because you don't normally want to hang out with somebody who's unclean. It's bringing it so that they can have that social support network and not just feel like they can only hang out with here at Ren. We want to get them to where they feel good about themselves, they're being healthy, they're taking care of themselves. And then if we're seeing something that's concerning, we can let them know, hey, we recommend seeing your doctor. And we can let their case manager know, hey, we've observed this and we think maybe this person needs to get their skin checked, or maybe there's something going on here. And so that way we can encourage them to get medical treatment if needed.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned case manager and being outside, and those two things reminded me of. I just had Stephen Edgley on with Brothers for Hope. It's a homeless mission here in the Valley, and I was just wondering, how do people qualify to be part of Ren?
Yeah. So basically, anybody that has been diagnosed with a serious mental illness, it is a designation more than like a diagnosis with like schizophrenia or bipolar. And so it's basically saying that you do have a diagnosis that meets this criteria. And so you have a designation of seriously mentally ill. And regardless of like other health insurances and things like that, once you have that designation, you then qualify for services and it puts you on one of the Arizona health state plans. And so, kind of depending on what health state plan, you also have individuals for like reentry. They qualify for general mental health insurance through the state for 1 year after release. So, all of them qualify. And then people that are dealing with situations of homelessness, domestic violence, those kind of situations oftentimes also qualify for the general mental health or having substance use. So it's any of the Arizona state health plans that have one of those designators that would qualify.
Okay. Okay. So somebody is addicted to meth or heroin, and is it like a number of the shelters and other stuff, they have to be clean for like 3 days or something? I don't remember the rules, but
Yeah.
and then they have to go to a county facility to get diagnosed and designated?
Yes, so they can get designated through a process if they're going for the SMI. The general mental health is usually more of that situational thing. So, they are high on something and they've ended up in the emergency room, and the emergency room may fill out the HEA plus application for that person in order to get them health insurance for that emergency room visit. And then
Mhm.
because clearly more supports are needed, that's when they'll put on that general mental health substance use qualifier. And then the SMI, or seriously mentally ill designation, takes significantly more time, and it goes through another company that will determine if that is a proper designation for them. But yeah, and then we don't really have requirements around usage. We follow the SMART method, which is a reduction in harm versus more of the AA model, which is you have to stop today. And if you don't stop today, then you're not succeeding. And we have absolutely had people that have gotten high and then they immediately come here because they know it's somewhere safe. They know it is somewhere somebody's not going to steal things from them. They're not going to beat them up. They're not going to hurt them. And so we often actually get individuals that are high and are here on the property, but we have certain rules around it. You still have to meet the code of ethics, which was set up by our members. They made decisions on what they will and will not allow within the organization. They have to stay awake. They can't be aggressive. They still have to be willing to follow all the rules. So just because you're on substances, that's a journey we're with them for. And so we never try to
Okay.
shame a person. We do have what's called an accountability pause. So if we have somebody who's like trying to bring drugs on the property and get high on the property, that of course is putting other people's recovery at risk. And so
Right.
we'd have to have a conversation about that. This is what we're doing. What's the plan? Okay, you're not listening to what we're asking you to do. We're going to take a pause and you're going to have to step away for a little bit because it's just not healthy for you or other members. And usually those are received pretty well. And, unfortunately, those are consequences of choices, but we have a lot of fun. And so if you want to have that fun and you want to go camping and you want to get those meals and you want to hang out with us, then you have to abide by at least some of these bare
Right.
minimum rules.
Sure. Sure. You mentioned, it sounds like you're incredibly open, and you mentioned the social aspect of it. A lot of people are very isolated, and partially
Yes.
because of their appearance and maybe personal hygiene and other stuff.
Yep.
They haven't had a
There's
hug in a
a
long time.
there's a lot of stigma that goes around mental health and homelessness and a lot of fear. And a lot of times these individuals have never had somebody that have stopped to say hello. They have never had somebody that has willing to be their friend and talk to them and listen to them and actually understand and hear them. And a lot of times they don't want you to try and solve their problem. They just want another person to talk to. And oftentimes in our adult relationships, we either have our significant other or we have close friends, that we have people that we can express those frustrations and emotions and share those highlights with. Unfortunately, for those that are isolated and stigmatized, they may have just had the best day of their entire life or the worst day of their entire life, and they don't have anybody to debrief with.
Right.
And so instead of them being alone and feeling like nobody in the world cares about them, we have 80 people sitting here ready to celebrate their accomplishments.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. What's one of the bigger challenges you've had at Ren?
Um, I think keeping up with policies and making sure you can balance funding and being able to pay my peer supports a livable wage is
Okay.
is kind of the hardest thing. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We are non-clinical. We don't have any psychiatrists or doctors or anybody on site. And so, it's a significantly lower rate that we get paid because of that. But it doesn't mean the work isn't just as important. And unfortunately, with how high, rent and everything is out here, a lot of our staff, in order to do the job that they're doing, they not only have to work here 40 hours a week, they also have to have part-time jobs elsewhere.
Oh boy.
But they believe in the mission and it helps their sobriety being in our mission. And so they put forth 40 hours a week here and then go work other place to kind of meet those ends. So the biggest thing for me and the toughest thing is making sure that, I try to pour as much funds into my staff and making them stable, because the same time that we're trying to stabilize our members, we're trying to keep our staff stable at the same time.
Right. Right. And so when you say member, forgot the term, your staff or your forgot
Recovery
the term.
coaches.
Yeah, versus the members, right?
Yeah.
Those are
So
how
rather than
many, you said
calling
that
them
40 employees, and how many members?
So we have about 400 members
Okay.
registered, and then on site every day, usually about 80. And then during like our big events, like we do a huge Christmas event and we do a big Thanksgiving event where we do a seated dinner and, everybody comes out and all of the staff serve the members and it's really formal with linens and all of that
Oh,
kind of
wow.
stuff.
Fancy.
We usually get about 120 to 130 members that will come out for that.
Okay. We were talking before the show briefly about some other events you guys put on annually. Can you share those? We just missed
Absolutely.
them, I think.
Yeah. So in January, we do our Sober Riders event where motorcycle clubs and car clubs that really focus on sobriety come together and they host it here at our location on 3rd Street in Osborne. And it's beautiful because the whole community can come together and celebrate sobriety. And, oftentimes with motorcycle clubs and car clubs, there's a lot of stigma and shame and things that go into that as well and not understanding. And so it's wonderful to kind of bring that community together to see that, they're out there encouraging sobriety and doing these things as well. And then they give the profit back to us and they donate it back to us for that event. And so we've really
Nice.
enjoyed that. And then every March we have our annual community 5K. And what's really neat about our 5K, it's kind of a 5K block party because I am not much of a jogger, but I will absolutely go do an event. And what's nice is we have that open to the community and there's no charge. Now, there is kind of like a craft show that goes on, but we have cotton candy and popcorn and bounce houses and all of those things that the community can come in and participate in. Growing up, I came from a low income, food insecure home. And we could go to events, but when you got to the event, you couldn't participate in anything. You could walk
Yeah.
around, but if mom
Right.
and dad didn't have any money, you weren't getting to do what the other kids are doing. And so, what we really try to do with this event is make it open to the community. And if there's something fun going on in that event, every single person there can participate, regardless of where they are financially.
Okay.
And then
Awesome.
this year, we also are doing our 20th anniversary. I just don't have a date of when we're going to do that event yet.
Okay. Excellent. But it's June 20th is the
Yeah, it
anniversary.
is June 20th, but we will likely be doing it at the end of the year because
Ah,
Phoenix is really hot in June.
sure.
And I really don't want to do an event in June.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Very cool. Any other big goals like in the next 12 years? I mean, 12 months, sorry, 2025? No, in the next 20 years? Yeah.
The next
What
20
do
years,
you,
yeah. So in the next 12 months, one of our really big goals is we are attempting to open a reentry home. And so it's not a sober living home per se. It will be sober home, but it's a reentry home. And so our goal is to scholarship individuals for a 90-day program and give them housing. One of the things that we've really seen an issue with is individuals will come out of the prison system and go into a sober living home. They have to have some sort of certified address in order to be released. And so you go into a home that is $250 a week that they need to pay. Unfortunately, they do not have a job the day that they come out of prison. And so they can get a loan basically from the house and it gives them a couple of weeks. But you're 3 weeks in, you now owe $750. You still probably do not have a great full-time paying job. That's even if you've managed to get a job, have you gotten a paycheck yet?
right.
And so then those individuals do know how to make quick money. Unfortunately, it is what led them into prison usually the first time. And so then they hit the streets again, they get picked up, and then they're right back in prison because they didn't have the time to get their feet underneath of them. And so our goal is to open these reentry homes. We're starting with a women's home and giving them those 90 days where they can participate in groups here at Ren. And we can set up with the anger management class that we have. We have a parenting class, we have a relationship class, we have our Hope Store team, which can help them get their driver's license and ID, social security cards, birth certificates. There's a lot of things that get people's way of getting restarted, getting your GED or your high school diploma paperwork that you have to turn in order to get a job. And so giving them kind of those 90 days to get all of those pieces together in a supportive environment and then kind of let them go off and fly. So that way they have that support that they need when they get out versus a bill that they have to somehow figure out how to pay.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know that. So that's
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind
incredibly
of our goal
valuable.
in the next 12 months is trying to give that opportunity for individuals that are coming out and want to make a different life choice. But sometimes, they just don't have the resources or many don't have family or support network when they come out. And so they're alone trying to make it work. And it's hard to get it all back together in 1 month and be a successful person in the society when especially some of these individuals have been out for 10, 15 years. It's a whole new world they're coming out to, and they're expected to adjust immediately and be able to pay their bills within 2 weeks. That's just an unreasonable request.
Yeah, for sure. That's incredibly powerful and impactful stuff. That's great. So April, if people would like to learn more about Ren or connect with you, what should they do?
So we have a website, renaz.org, and it has a ton of more information and more services that we offer. We have a big art program. We have a podcast as well called Healthy Mind. We have programs that teach our staff members how to do film development and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, the website is my best recommendation. And on there, like if they know somebody that could benefit from those services, there's a self-referral on there, which is usually just a couple basic questions so we can offer support.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Thank you very much, April Lopez, for joining me today. We appreciate you sharing your story and insights and the big impact you're having in Phoenix. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.